The courtroom in Washington, D.C. was buzzing with anticipation, the kind of energy that crackled in the air before something unforgettable happened. Reporters filled every seat, pens ready, cameras flashing, while a restless crowd whispered about what was about to unfold. At the center of it all sat Chief Justice John Roberts, his expression calm but sharp, radiating the quiet authority of America's highest legal mind. Across from him, JD Vance, the Ohio senator whose rapid rise had shocked the political establishment, adjusted his tie and leaned back in his chair. His calm demeanor contrasted with the storm around him. The confrontation was no ordinary hearing. It was framed as a legal challenge that could define both men's legacies. Roberts had a reputation for defending the traditional order, while Vance, known for his populist fire and sharp intellect, had built his career on tearing down elite narratives. Tonight, Roberts seemed determined to put Vance in his place, but the senator had other plans. "Senator Vance," Roberts began, his tone precise and deliberate, "your arguments may play well on cable news, but in this courtroom, they carry little weight. The law is about precedent, not political theater." A murmur rippled through the audience. Some smirked, expecting Vance to falter under the Chief Justice's piercing words. But Vance didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned forward, his eyes steady, his voice calm but cutting. "Mr. Chief Justice, with all due respect, precedent is only as strong as its foundation. And if that foundation is cracked, then it's not justice, it's just tradition hiding behind robes." The room went silent. Reporters froze mid-scribble. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the moment where the senator had dared to challenge the highest legal authority in the land. The clash had only just begun, but already it was clear, this was no ordinary exchange. Roberts wanted to reduce Vance to a headline. Instead, Vance was about to prove he was more than a politician, he was a strategist, a storyteller, and, above all, a legal mind that could hold his own against the Supreme Court itself. The Chief Justice leaned forward, his tone sharpening, his words clipped with the authority of decades spent shaping legal doctrine. "Senator Vance, you talk about cracked foundations. Yet the stability of our republic depends on respecting those very foundations. Without precedent, we drift into chaos. Do you intend to dismantle every pillar simply because you find cracks?" The audience murmured again, sensing Roberts had cornered him. A few reporters nodded knowingly, already drafting headlines about a senator outmatched by the nation's top jurist. But Vance, calm as ever, didn't take the bait. He clasped his hands, pausing long enough to let the silence thicken, before replying. "With all due respect, Mr. Chief Justice," he began, his voice steady and deliberate, "chaos doesn't come from questioning bad precedent. Chaos comes from ignoring it. Our Constitution wasn't written to be preserved in amber, it was written to be defended, challenged, and strengthened by those who believe in it. If precedent is a pillar, then we owe it to the American people to make sure it's not rotting beneath the surface." A few gasps echoed through the gallery. Some clapped before being hushed by guards. Roberts's eyes narrowed. He leaned back, steepling his fingers, trying to gauge whether Vance was simply grandstanding or if he truly believed what he was saying. "Senator," Roberts said finally, "you speak as though you alone can decide what is rot and what is strength. That is arrogance masquerading as wisdom." JD Vance didn't flinch. He tilted his head, almost smiling. "Or perhaps, Mr. Chief Justice, it's courage. Because when the people outside this building feel the weight of laws that no longer serve them, they don't call it precedent. They call it injustice. And if we, the ones in this room, refuse to fix it, then we're not guardians of the law, we're accomplices in its decay." The silence was electric. Even the seasoned reporters, who had covered countless hearings, looked stunned. JD Vance wasn't just surviving this confrontation, he was turning the courtroom into his own stage. Chief Justice Roberts adjusted his glasses, his voice colder now, carrying the full gravity of his office. "Senator Vance, you dress your defiance in lofty words. But the law does not bend to passion. It is built on restraint, on discipline, on respect for order. If every legislator spoke as you do, we would not have justice, we would have anarchy. The courtroom seemed to lean in, all eyes locked on the duel between the nation's most powerful jurist and the rising senator. Some in the press scribbled furiously, others simply stared, realizing they were witnessing a moment that would be replayed for years. Vance didn't rush his reply. He let the silence breathe, his posture calm, his voice steady when it finally broke through. With respect, Mr. Chief Justice, the founders didn't fight a revolution for restraint. They didn't cross oceans and risk their lives for order. They risked it for freedom. Freedom isn't born from blind obedience, it's born from questioning power, even when that power wears robes. The gallery gasped. A few scattered claps broke out before marshals hushed them. Even Roberts paused, his lips tightening. Vance leaned in, his tone sharper now, every word aimed like an arrow. You call it anarchy when citizens speak against laws that fail them. I call it democracy. And if democracy makes this chamber uncomfortable, perhaps the problem isn't the people, it's the laws we defend. The silence that followed was deafening. The court reporter's pen froze mid-word. Reporters exchanged glances, sensing the ground shifting beneath them. Roberts cleared his throat, but his words stumbled slightly, betraying the pressure of the moment. Senator Vance, he said, his voice taut, do you suggest this court abandoned centuries of wisdom for populist rhetoric? JD Vance leaned back, calm, unyielding. Not abandon, Mr. Chief Justice. Correct. Because wisdom that cannot withstand scrutiny isn't wisdom at all, it's vanity. The crowd erupted, this time the marshals couldn't stop them. Cameras flashed, and in that instant, JD Vance had transformed the courtroom into an arena, turning the tables on the very man who had tried to break him. Roberts adjusted in his chair, his jaw tightening. For a man known for composure, there was a flicker of irritation now. His voice came lower, firmer, meant to reassert control. Senator Vance, it's easy to speak of vanity when you're not the one tasked with preserving the legitimacy of this court. Your words may ignite applause here, but if every precedent is open to attack, then every ruling becomes fragile. You risk unraveling the very system that allows you to stand here and speak. The audience hushed, recognizing the weight of Roberts's words. Some nodded in agreement, others leaned forward, eager to see how Vance would answer. JD Vance didn't hesitate. He tapped the table lightly with his finger, as though punctuating his thought. Mr. Chief Justice, the legitimacy of this court doesn't come from robes, rituals, or marble halls. It comes from the people believing the law is fair. If precedent protects injustice, then legitimacy is already lost. And no amount of ceremony can restore it. The words hit the room like a gavel strike. A journalist whispered, "That's the headline," as cameras zoomed in closer. Robert straightened, his eyes narrowing. So you would have us tear down what generations have built? You would replace centuries of balance with your own interpretation? Vance leaned in, his voice quiet but cutting through the silence. Not my interpretation, our Constitution's. Not my voice, the people's. The danger isn't in questioning bad law. The danger is pretending it's sacred when everyone knows it's broken. The gallery erupted, some clapping, others gasping, while guards tried to maintain order. Roberts's expression hardened, but there was a glimmer in his eyes, perhaps recognition that Vance's argument was striking chords beyond the courtroom. JD Vance sat back, calm as ever, as if he had been waiting for this moment all along. He wasn't merely defending himself, he was dismantling the very narrative Roberts had hoped would crush him. Chief Justice Roberts's patience was wearing thin. His voice rose, not in volume but in weight, every word laced with authority. Senator Vance, you speak of the people as though they can simply override the very structure designed to protect them. Do you not understand? The Constitution survives precisely because we temper passion with precedent. Without that restraint, we are no better than mobs writing law in the streets. A few in the gallery applauded the line, nodding at the reminder of judicial restraint. But Vance, far from shaken, allowed a faint smile to cross his lips. He leaned forward, his tone measured, almost surgical. "Mr. Chief Justice, with respect, mobs don't write laws. Legislators do. And when legislators fail, the people remind us. That isn't chaos, it's accountability. What you call restraint, too many Americans now see as indifference. They look at this court and wonder if it belongs to them, or to a club of elites who have forgotten what life looks like outside these walls." The words landed like a hammer. Reporters' pens scratched furiously. Even those who disagreed couldn't deny the electricity building in the room. Roberts narrowed his eyes, pushing back. "And so you would reduce the court to politics, Senator? You would turn justice into theater?" Vance met his gaze directly, voice firm. Justice already became theater the moment ordinary Americans stopped believing in it. "I'm not the one who put on that show. But maybe I'm the one reminding this chamber of its audience." The crowd gasped. Some broke into applause, others booed, but no one was silent. The chamber itself seemed to vibrate with the tension of the exchange. Roberts straightened, lips pressed tight, his authority challenged in a way few had ever dared. JD Vance, calm and unshaken, had taken the Chief Justice's attempt to break him and transformed it into a platform, a stage where his intellect wasn't just defending him, but putting Roberts himself on trial. The tension in the chamber had reached a knife's edge. Roberts, the embodiment of judicial restraint, leaned forward, his voice now carrying a sharper edge. "Senator Vance, your rhetoric plays well with the public, but this is not a town hall. This court cannot bend to populist winds. If we did, justice would be nothing more than majority rule, and that is not the republic the founders built." The gallery hummed with approval from Roberts's supporters. For a moment, it looked as if he had regained control. But Vance's expression didn't falter. His calm eyes scanned the room, then locked on Roberts with quiet intensity. "Mr. Chief Justice," Vance said firmly, "you invoke the founders often. But remember, they were rebels against precedent. Against kings, against courts that declared themselves untouchable. They didn't build this nation to protect power from the people. They built it to protect the people from power." The chamber erupted. Applause thundered despite marshals rushing to silence the gallery. Even seasoned journalists looked up from their notes, stunned at the audacity of the line. Roberts's lips thinned into a tight line. "And do you claim to speak for the people, Senator? A single man against centuries of law?" Vance leaned forward, his voice lowering, each word deliberate. "Not a single man, Mr. Chief Justice. A citizen. Just like every farmer, every worker, every parent who feels this court has stopped listening. If the law doesn't serve them, then it isn't justice, it's tyranny dressed in precedent." Gasps cut through the room. A stunned silence fell as even Roberts hesitated, his gavel unused in front of him. JD Vance hadn't just defended himself, he had reframed the entire debate, turning the question of precedent into a moral reckoning. And in that silence, it became clear, Roberts was no longer the one testing Vance. Vance was testing the court itself. Chief Justice Roberts finally reached for his gavel, striking it once against the bench. The crack echoed through the chamber, demanding silence. "Order," he commanded, though even his tone betrayed frustration. He straightened his shoulders, fixing Vance with the full weight of his authority. "Senator, you cloak your arguments in the language of revolution. But this court cannot govern by rebellion. The people do not look to us for passion, they look to us for stability." For a moment, it seemed Roberts had regained his footing. His words carried the solemnity of centuries of jurisprudence. Some in the gallery nodded, reassured by the reminder of institutional gravitas. But JD Vance leaned forward, his eyes locked on the Chief Justice, his voice steady and unflinching. "Mr. Chief Justice, stability without accountability isn't justice. It's stagnation. The people don't fear passion. They fear being ignored. And right now, millions feel exactly that the court has become deaf to their cries. The line rippled through the audience like a wave. Reporters scribbled furiously, knowing this would be the quote of the night. Roberts frowned, his tone sharp. So you would put this court on trial before the public, Senator? Vance didn't miss a beat. No, sir. The court has already put itself on trial. Every decision that protects power over people is its own verdict. I'm only reading the judgment the American people already see. The chamber gasped. Some clapped despite warnings from guards. Cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing Roberts's tight jaw and Vance's unwavering stare. In that moment, it was no longer a hearing, it was a duel for legitimacy itself. Roberts sought to remind the nation of the court's supremacy. But Vance, with precise words and unshakable calm, was forcing the audience to ask, whose side was justice truly on? Roberts's gavel rested on the bench, but his authority felt shaken. His voice came lower now, controlled yet edged with strain. Senator Vance, you risk confusing passion with principle. The Constitution is not a weapon for your crusade. It is a shield meant to protect the nation from the whims of demagogues. If every man with a cause could bend it, there would be no law left to honor. The words carried weight, echoing through the chamber. But Vance sat motionless, his eyes steady, letting the silence stretch before he spoke. When he did, his voice was calm enough to unnerve even the Chief Justice. Mr. Chief Justice, the Constitution is not a shield for the powerful. It's a sword for the powerless. You call it protection from demagogues. I call it protection from complacency. The founders didn't write it to keep the people in their place. They wrote it to remind leaders of theirs. Gasps cut through the gallery. Reporters glanced at each other, recognizing the magnitude of the statement. Roberts opened his mouth, but Vance pressed forward, his tone sharper, every phrase deliberate. You fear the Constitution in the hands of the people because it forces accountability. But tell me, what is more dangerous? A citizen questioning the law, or a court convinced it's above question? The audience erupted, cheers, claps, whistles echoing despite marshals scrambling to maintain order. The chamber no longer felt like a courtroom, it felt like an arena. And in that arena, Roberts looked less like the immovable pillar of justice, and more like a man wrestling with a challenger who refused to break. For the first time, cameras caught it, a flicker of doubt crossing the Chief Justice's face. JD Vance didn't just hold his ground. He was turning Roberts's gavel into a mirror, reflecting the court back onto itself. The chamber felt heavy with silence, as though every breath waited for Roberts's next move. The Chief Justice sat taller, his gavel resting firmly in his hand, but the authority in his presence no longer felt unshakable. He cleared his throat, his voice steady but carrying an unmistakable edge. Senator Vance, he began, the Constitution is not yours to redefine. It belongs to this court, to centuries of interpretation. Your words may inspire, but they lack the discipline of law. Without discipline, you offer nothing but noise. The words cut like steel, and some in the gallery nodded, relieved to hear Roberts assert control again. Yet JD Vance remained composed, his hands folded, his tone calm enough to command attention. Mr. Chief Justice, Vance replied, his voice resonant, discipline without courage is nothing but cowardice in robes. You say the Constitution belongs to this court. I say it belongs to the people. The court interprets it, but it does not own it. And when interpretation becomes a shield for the powerful, then the people have not just the right, but the duty, to demand correction. The audience stirred. Some gasped, others cheered openly. Guards tried to maintain order, but the words had already ignited the crowd. Roberts's face stiffened, his voice rising slightly. And if every senator, every populist voice, tears at the fabric of precedent, what remains? What stops us from sinking into lawless passion? Vance leaned forward, his eyes sharp, his voice cutting through the uproar. What remains, Mr. Chief Justice, is exactly what the founders left us: truth, accountability, and the will of a free people. Passion is not the enemy of law. Corruption disguised as tradition is. And that is what I refuse to defend. The chamber erupted again, cheers, applause, even chants of Vance. Vance, as the camera zoomed in, capturing Roberts's tight grip on his gavel and Vance's unshaken resolve. This was no longer a courtroom duel. It was a national reckoning, and JD Vance had turned what should have been his humiliation into a stunning moment of triumph. The chamber had become a storm of voices, half outrage, half applause, as the Chief Justice slammed his gavel again and again. Order! This is still the Supreme Court of the United States. Roberts barked, his face tight with strain. Yet no matter how many times the gavel struck, it couldn't drown out the electricity JD Vance had unleashed. Finally, Roberts leaned forward, his tone biting. Senator Vance, history will not remember passion. It will remember discipline, structure, and the rule of law. And tonight, you have shown little of it. For a heartbeat, the room stilled. All eyes shifted to Vance, waiting for the reply that could define not just this hearing, but his career. He rose from his seat, adjusting his jacket, his presence commanding in its calm. When he spoke, his words were steady, deliberate, and heavy with finality. Mr. Chief Justice, history doesn't remember silence in the face of injustice. It doesn't honor the men who looked at broken laws and said, "That's precedent." It honors those who dared to speak when speaking was dangerous. You may call that passion, I call it duty. The gallery erupted. Applause thundered, chants of Vance. Vance, filling the chamber like waves crashing against marble walls. Even the journalists, seasoned in political theater, admitted silently, this was no ordinary performance. Vance turned, his gaze sweeping the audience, then back to Roberts. His voice dropped lower, but carried to every corner of the chamber. If defending the people makes me reckless in your eyes, so be it. Better reckless with justice than disciplined in corruption. The explosion of cheers was deafening. Cameras captured the split screen, Roberts gripping his gavel, jaw set, and JD Vance standing tall, unbroken, a figure who had not only survived the trial but transformed it into a testament of defiance. And in that moment, the verdict was clear, not from the court, but from the people who would remember this clash for years to come. JD Vance hadn't just won an argument. He had redefined the battlefield.